Hello and welcome to another video. This one's a bit different. Rather than me doing like a single repair, what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to go through all the key points to recommission a Sony C30 in this case, but also applies to C20 and C40 and C80. All uses the same deck, and to a certain extent also the HF100, the hi-fi model, which uses pretty much the same deck as well, and has some of the same problems. So rather than you watching me taking stuff apart, I'm gonna take it apart off camera and then just show you what to check for. So the first thing we're going to look at is where the machine will take the tape in, but once the tape is in, these gears will just spin and it won't lace, basically. So yeah, let's have a look at that. So first thing, when you're taking these apart, or rather putting them together, reassembling this, when you tension this back up, you don't need a huge amount of tension. In fact, they'll run fine like this, although they might, depending on how tight the belt is, it might slap against this. But don't over tighten the screw because it will crack the plastic here. It just needs to basically just be held and maybe a little bit more pressure, and that's enough. So yeah, just be a bit careful with the tightening of that. So having taken that all apart, so to do that, you need to take this assembly off the top of the solenoid first, 2 screws, lift it off. That has a spring which links onto this bit here. Now you can just move it out of the way, but invariably it will fall off, so I always take it off. Then it's just 2 screws either side of the motor on the top of the assembly there. Just lift it off, lift it out the way. There might be a cable tie down there, so there was in this machine. Just remove that. I never bothered to replace that. It's never caused me a problem. And yeah, what you're looking for is on this black gear here, you're looking for any cracks. And you can see this one actually is pretty perfect. What's that? Yeah, it's pretty perfect. Sometimes they split from the top down. The last few I've seen have actually split from the bottom, but this one is actually completely, utterly perfect. So that's not much of an example really. But if it is cracked, you can actually buy a gear which will do the trick beautifully. And I will try and put a link to an eBay listing with these on in the description. Basically with these, I forget the number of teeth now, I think it's 19 or 20 teeth. But anyway, yes, one of these gears, pull off the black gear, and then what I tend to do actually is split the top here and push the metal back through, so you've just got the shaft with the black gear on. Then you pull the black gear off. It usually comes off fairly easily, to be honest, especially when it's spinning, or has been spinning for a while. Then I put a tiny bit of gel superglue, not standard, but gel superglue, just a smear all the way round. And then I put a tiny bit of the same glue, gel glue, on the whole of the gear here, just at the entrance. And then I gently push that on until it goes all the way over the sort of roughened up area then, and give it a little bit of a turn, sort of slide it just a few degrees on the metal shaft very quickly, and then leave it set. And I've found that coats the inside properly. As much of the inside of the gear is in contact with the metal, and I've done a couple of machines like this now and really hammered them, and they've been absolutely fine. Yeah, that's a really good way to get around it. So I've just had a dig around, and I've actually found an old gear I haven't thrown away yet. You can see the split. It's really very fine. I'm just pushing that apart with my nail. This one's gone right the way from the bottom to the top, and that was spinning on the shaft. This one, and I've only had this maybe a couple of times. This one's actually got a missing tooth. I don't know if you can see that. It's actually a missing tooth. There. So while this will still load a tape, or lace the tape, it'll be very unrefined and clunk about and not be pleasant. So so one of those gears, one of those white gears, is your best friend. The other thing I did forget to mention is the original black gear hasn't got teeth right to the end. This bit is flat, flattened off, and that's to stop this sliding off. So it sort of holds that captive. So just be careful when you're putting it back together. I tend to you can actually just keep a finger against this, just to stop it dropping. And once it's really close to the deck, it doesn't matter, it will just stay in place. But it's just something just to be aware of, that will no longer be captive. One thing that can be confusing, it's always confusing for me, I always have to do a double take when I put this assembly back on, is how it actually does go together. So, goes that way onto the top of the solenoid, and the little catch that you can see here, that goes over that pin on the solenoid, and then the spring obviously goes back on here. So invariably when you take it apart, this little bit of plastic here will swing round and it will all just go horribly wrong. You look at it and think, how on earth do I get that back? How does it go? That's how it goes. This bit of metal will also come off the off here as well. If you slide that right the way round to the furthest extent, to the opposite side to where that is now, that will just lift off. So yeah, don't panic if it just falls off. That'll be why. So you just line it back up with these top bits of plastic here, and then just rotate it back round, and you're good to go. Now, another common problem I'm seeing with these machines is these coming loose or being able to be turned. And what can happen is if this gets sort of too far out of alignment, it will foul the assembly here, and it will cause it to either jump the plastic track or just get jammed, which you really don't want. So yeah, what I've done in the past is just lined this up. So this needs to be basically flat here, no overhang. So flat like that. You can see there's a little hole, and that's where the little bit of plastic would have been. And I just literally get a resistor and just push it in there, heat it up a little bit, or heat it up, and push it in there so it just enters the plastic, and then chop off the top of it. and that'll stop it swinging around and still make it removable. You could glue it, you could super glue it. I remember ages ago I did actually do that. I just super glued it and thought, well, you know, that's fine. But if you ever need to remove it to do any work on the loading ring, then it's just a little bit more effort to get it off. It will actually come off, but yeah, you're sort of trying to fight against super glue, and that's not ideal. So yeah, that's the method I would use. The next thing is the front buttons for the tape functions, tape transport functions. Now this is more relevant really on the C20, where you don't have any remote at all. But these buttons do wear, and they do cause all sorts of intermittent problems. So I will just change these as a matter of course now. Obviously on a C20, if they do start playing up, then that's it. You can't operate the machine until you change the switches. They're not expensive. They are the momentary tact switch. What are they? AD020 type seem to be the best. That's what I've bought. They are not quite as proud as the Sony switches, but they work fine. And they're 6x6 by 5mm button depth. Don't have the same sort of feel as the Sony switches. You know, they feel a little bit less refined, but they work. So I've not found any that really replace them. Any replacements that are as nice as the Sony ones. They do actually look a bit smaller, and they are, but they fit perfectly. They fit perfectly into the PCB. So yeah, that does make quite a bit of difference to the reliability of the deck. The other thing as well is these doors. Invariably they're filthy, and these are no exception. And it potentially looks like a horrible job to remove them, but it isn't. So you've got a little bit of plastic here, sort of this plastic assembly, and this bit here is jutting out, and that's so you can get something. I mean, I'm just using my nail, but you just pull that out. Dropped it like so. And then these just slide, and you can lift them out. And this one drops down. Tape just catching it there. Now putting it back is a little bit of you have to sort of jiggle it a little bit so they're properly shut, which you can do by just moving this here. So I mean, what I do is I push that flush, mount them, give it a little jiggle, and then let go, and that's usually perfect for just getting them nicely shut, but also so they operate at the right time when the tape's ejecting. I'm just a bit concerned. That looks like blood stains. Someone stick their finger in there and pulls their heart. It drew blood. I think the plastic would break first. So another problem I'm finding with these machines, really all Sony's, Sony Betamaxes, the newer ones, is solder joints breaking, or the print breaking for the video out, especially the video out, because that's the one that's used the most. Really, they weren't designed to have constant toing and froing with, you know, connectors being pushed in and out all the time. And and generally, originally, most machines were used on the RFLs anyway, so plugging something in the back was a fairly rare occurrence. These days, of course, people want to copy, digitize their beta tapes or whatever, and this is the way to go. You use the video out. But as a result, there's quite a lot of stress on the sockets, and also when they're packaged up badly, these are one of the first things that seem to suffer. So what I do as a matter of course now is I just put a little wire from the actual connector itself where it comes through the print there, and just to this pad and or cap here. I do the same on the inputs, so up to there. The audio ones don't seem to suffer so much, but again, I mean, it's not maybe a bad idea just to run a little bit of wire across. What's interesting about this board as well is you can see it's the same board that's used in the C40, just with the stereo elements not included. And I do actually wonder, and maybe somebody can tell me this, is this the same board as used on the HF100, because it's got the multi-out, in-out DIN connector position here, and this does look very much like an HF100. I might have a spare board actually, so we can compare it. But yeah, that's one thing that's definitely worth doing, because they do go intermittent, they do go poorly. So yeah, so certainly worth a go. So next is a power supply, and this is a common issue with this range of machines. There are a couple of caps, especially one in particular, that causes problems. And this particular machine, has it really, really bad. Typically, when this particular capacitor goes bad, you get sort of herringbone lines on the picture, regardless of whether it's like the test signal at the RF or playing a video or whatever. And usually it improves as the machine warms up. With this machine, it's there all the time, and the actual capacitor in question is actually getting hot. So yeah, it's really poorly. But it can look a little bit daunting actually getting this power supply out. It really isn't too bad. So I've removed the screws, and I'll just show you through it. So first of all, these two, and this allows you to lift the plate out. See, there's a little bit of a scorch mark there, and then screw down the bottom there, another screw down the bottom there, then 3 screws for the mains cable, and then you've got these screws here, 1, 2, 3. Usually these 3 are pretty tight, to be fair. And then just unplug the connectors, and you should be able to lift that out. So that's it, it's out, and there it is in all its glory. And what I did to sort of help get it out cleanly is I just lifted this little plastic cable management retainer. This just basically splay open the 2 little plastic clips a little bit. You can use a screwdriver if you want. Flat blade, just twist slightly, just pop up. I just use my nail, and that allows you to move it out the way to put it out. So the 2 capacitors that tend to cause all the problems, and in my case it is this one that's running hot, are these 22 microfarad 16 volt capacitors. So they have to go regardless. They just have to go. They have to be replaced. I tend to replace as many of these as I can, this one and this one, This one I tend not to worry about so much. That I seem to remember is for the tuning voltages, 63 volts, and I also change these two here. This one always seems to be fine. Another thing I have started doing is replacing these fuses, because with age and sort of powering on, powering off, whatever, they start to get weak, and I have known them just fracture. They don't blow; they just fracture, and you just get like a little break in them, and that's annoying. So yeah, I tend to change all the fuses as well, just to be on the safe side for the reliable side of things. So one thing I did forget, you might actually be puzzling as to how you actually get to the back of this board and the back of this board. I mean, you can well, yeah, undo the two screws there and there, but it's still fixed by the heatsink clamp for the STK chip. So what I do is I don't worry about that. I just literally take out the two screws on this side of the board, and then because those other two screws are out, you can actually fold that down, and that gives you enough access. Obviously this is easy, but there's enough access to also get those two other small capacitors out of the other side of the board, so it's actually not that bad. It's all done. I've changed all the capacitors, I've also replaced the fuses. I did elect to change these two as well. Probably didn't need to be changed, but I've done it because I've got them, and ultimately it makes it even more reliable, I suppose. I never bother with the main smoothing capacitor. I've never had a problem with them, but the other two little capacitors you can see there, 47 microfarad, 16 volts, they've been changed. Plus the two fuses on this side as well, again just for reliability. They weren't blown, but it does improve the reliability of these things. So yeah, time to put it back together. One thing I forgot was actually the underside of the mechanism, and things here to check. Well, I always put just a little bit of grease on the spindles, give them a clean, make sure they don't rock. If they rock, that's a sign that the plastic that these metal rods go into is cracked. You can super glue the plastic back together, and I've had quite a lot of success with doing that. And also the motor, these are notoriously bad at sort of losing their ability to clear the coils from wear. This one was actually jammed, so I need to take this apart anyway and just give it a good old clean and grease. Again, just a tiny bit of lubricant on there just to clean them up. I do also put some switch cleaner in the leaf switches, because they do cause problems with age and time and use. And the other thing I've done, well, I do this all the time now, whether I think it needs it or not, is I have cleaned, I don't know if you can see that, I've cleaned all the glue off the Hall effect sensor. What I use for that is a little bit of isopropyl. Just squirt a tiny bit in there. Use a cotton bud to start sort of breaking down the glue. Then I give it a scrape with something relatively sharp, not necessarily a screwdriver. I mean, I have been, it's a terrible thing to use them for. I've been using just these tweezers. They're really cheap and nasty anyway, but they're sharp and accurate. Just scrape the glue from in between the the legs there, being very careful not to pull on them too much. And then a bit more isopropyl, and then I use a toothbrush just to sort of give it a good old brush, and that will remove pretty much all of the remains of the glue. And yeah, that will stop your whole effect from failing, hopefully. So yeah, it's well worth doing. This is a bit of an extra. I think I mentioned that the spool motor appeared to be jamming. Well, it actually turned out it wasn't. It was actually the idler, and somebody had actually packed this with heavy grease. Now these idlers, they're really cool. They're not like a lot of decks, and all of the VHS decks that I'm aware of use a clutch. They use a felt pad clutch. These actually use a magnet, so you can pull these off. But what someone had done is they'd put heavy grease in between, and to really add insult to injury, there was actually a little bit of broken plastic from somewhere, not from this machine, actually on the spool there, so you could actually feel the plastic sort of grating in with this heavy grease. But yeah, if I just go find that, and that's it. That's on. Nothing else holds it on bar the magnets. So I'm sure you'll never come across that, but quite an interesting one that actually caused all my problems with this machine, initially anyway. But yeah, you can see it's apart. I've taken these ball racers off and just lubricated them very slightly with some silicone, high-performance silicone lubricant. I actually do it between my fingers. It's probably really a bad idea to do that, but make sure my fingers are actually really, really clean. Just spray a little bit on the bearings, just rub them between my fingers gently. You can feel the little ball bearings actually freeing up. It does make a huge difference on these. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend you do it that way, but that's the way I do it, and it works. Probably also worth mentioning that underneath and on top of the ball race is a little washer. I'll show you that. There, you can just about see it. There. And usually when you take the spool off, the top washer comes off with the spool rather than sitting on top of the ball race. So yeah, just again something to be mindful of. I do tend to clean these as well, the washers, because as you can see they get a little bit of a groove in them sometimes, depending on how mucky the situation they've been in previously has been. They also, you know, it just makes it run better and not clog up the ball bearings. I also do clean the strip for the light sensor that detects the spool movement. I have seen these actually be really dull. Don't think it makes a huge amount of difference, to be honest, but it's nice, isn't it? It's nice to know it's been done. So while you're in there, just give that a clean as well. I just do that with a dry cloth. And maybe a little bit of a with your breath. If it's a little bit stubborn, usually it's pretty okay though. So yeah, so that's it. So this is pretty much good to go. I will just dust it off. You can probably see some bits of tape residue there to give it a bit of a dust off, and this one is actually good to go back together. Another thing that does happen with these as well is things like the plastic breaking. Like I mentioned before, these posts will actually move side to side sometimes because the assemblies they go into crack. But you can quite successfully glue these with some gel super glue, and all of these assemblies, in fact. I have also had the screw holes, these break off. I'm gluing those with gel super glue. Absolutely fine. Leave it for 24 hours to really harden, and yeah, they come out really well. So yeah, this is something else to be mindful of, that probably there's nothing actually wrong with it if they're moving about, other than the plastic's just cracked and it just needs resetting. And with this motor, nearly forgot about that. This you can just pull off, just literally just pull it off. Don't stick a screwdriver blade under there. Really a bad idea, because you'll damage the coils. But you can just, I don't want to do it one-handed. Let's see. It doesn't actually take a lot of force. I think that's coming. A little bit of a wiggle. I mean, obviously there's magnets there keeping it on, so there you go. So just check there's nothing fouling the magnets underneath, which there isn't. Maybe a tiny bit of lubrication there, which this one's already had. And putting it on is just the reverse. It's really difficult to do on camera. It just snaps back into place with the magnets. So if you're taking one of these apart, you're probably wondering how to get this spool off. At the moment you can see this would just lift straight off. There's nothing that holds these on, there's no clips or anything. But you do have to remove the brake, and it doesn't actually clear. If you put it back, it doesn't actually clear enough to allow the spool to come off. So Sony, bless them, have actually used this little bit of wire to fix one end of the spring, and then the other end of the brake goes through the deck and is held on with a clip, which is here. So what I'll do is I'll just put this on. Really difficult to film this. So that goes on like that. And then this, actually, it's easier to put the spring in first. The wire, wire assembly in first. I'll say it's easier. It's easy. Easy if you don't have to hold a camera. Like so. And then you have to be a little bit brutal. Now, when you take this off, make a note of where the spring goes, because that's the tension for it. I know that that went on the middle tooth. And then, oh, nasty bit of stretching. And that's it, that's on. And then turn it over. And that's where it comes through. And I probably won't be able to do this, because I need both hands. Let's see if I can do it. Bit of a challenge. So I'll do it one-handed. There we go. Just press it back on. To take it off, I just use my nail, but a little sort of fine flat blade screwdriver, just very gently just prise it off, and that's fine. They're quite resilient. So yeah, so that's it. So that is on, and just make sure that wire assembly is actually pushed all the way down, and that's it, that's on. So obviously taking it off is the reverse of that. Take off the clip off the back of this first, lift it up, then pull this out of here, and that's it, you're good to go. So putting the assembly back in, just make sure that this is properly located on this, and also the back tension guide here, that can be a little bit fiddly to sort of get in and out, so just take it steady when you pull it out, it will try and catch on its way up. So just sort of wiggle it about a bit. Just be aware that that needs to be carefully just guided through the hole. It is big enough. And then just make sure once you've got it sort of flat, just give it a little bit of a jiggle. I mean, you can see this has actually dropped down fairly nicely, but as I drop this down, it did need a little bit of a wiggle just to get it so it's properly flat. If you don't, and you try and tighten up the screws, it will sort of end up slightly ajar, not where it should be, and yeah, it just won't perform properly. You'll get all sorts of weird issues with the tapes. So yeah, just make sure that it is flush. You can sort of see, or maybe just about see, that it's flush on the screw posts. Actually looks as if there's a bit of a gap, but there isn't. It's just the metal. And these two as well, you can see they're pretty flush. And so that's ready to be screwed down tight, and we can put the board back down, put 2 screws in, and away to go. So all back together, and I've cleaned as I've gone along as well, so you can see the metal there is nice and shiny, and I've actually greased a lot of the screw threads as I've put them back in. Cleaned up the connectors to a certain extent. I'm not going to go crazy. Wires on, and reinforcing wires for the audio in and out, and flexible wires for the video in and out. Not my best work, but they will certainly do the trick. Just make things more reliable. So yeah, so now to put it back together, and this here, it's one of those things, you take them apart, and usually these little plastic bits, just cleaning the surfaces there. I've already cleaned the contacts. These always fall off when you take the front cover off. I'll have a habit of doing the same. How they go back is, you'll see the long one, get it to not stick to my finger, has a little bit cut off one of the corners, and that so it doesn't foul the tracking knob. You can see that, like so. So that goes there, and then this short one goes there, and that's it. So that's how they go. So new buttons for the tape transport functions. Cracking the board, so I have just put wire across those 2 bits there. It isn't actually cracked here. On the other side, it's just travelled up this side, so it's fine. Transit damage. These glued in. They don't actually do anything other than locate the board, so that's fine. Obviously we'll clean the doors. They're looking mighty fine, which is cool. Display is cleaned. I've sort of cleaned the inside. I've got the main of the dust off, but I don't go for the. I don't go too rough with these, just because the plastic's getting brittle with the age of these things. So I just don't want to break any bits of plastic off if I can help it. So I'm happy to do that. I've cleaned the back of the window and the IR window. Just got the worst of the dust off, and I'm happy with that. The front of it isn't actually cleaned yet. So yeah, I'll probably do that next, and then put it all together and see if it works. So something else you really have to watch out for. If you take this board off, invariably you'll have to cut the cable tie that's here. Now this really needs to be got right, otherwise what will happen is the front door will foul the the cable tie. So if you get it pretty tight, and just make sure that this is around about that position. Any higher, it will interrupt what's going on here with the front loading system and cause issues there. Any lower, it'll foul the door and it will feel horrible. So I think that's good to go. And snip that off and put the front cover on and see how it goes. So with the cable tie in that position, let's try it. Nice. So that's fine, and the front loading system will be fine as well. So that's cool. Okay, so we're all back together and time to see if it works. Now I'm sort of 50-50 whether we're going to get a picture with this, because it did actually have some quite bad image issues, not only from those capacitors in the power supply, but I think there's more to it than that. But anyway, let's give it a go. So far so good. So that's fine. Winding. Oh, that's actually fine. My Sony TV seems to intermittently display a black and white picture. So I am quite confident that probably this is actually working absolutely fine. But all the distortion's gone. The flickering you're seeing there is just because it's CRT display, and my camera's resolution is sort of beating with that. But yeah, I'm really pleased with how this machine's turned out. It looks so beautiful as well. It's just so clean now, and so well worth doing. It does take time, but it's worth taking the time to get these machines working as reliably as you know you can get them. I'm not saying that it won't go faulty, it won't generate faults. I just noticed that's undone there. So yeah, it's really a very lovely machine, and I just wish I could prove to you that it was working properly by showing you a colour picture, but obviously my Sony is not going to behave. So yeah, so thank you very much for watching this. I hope you got something out of this. It's a bit of a different format video to what I usually do, because I usually show you me taking things apart and whatever. I will do more of those videos, of course, and some of the things I've done in this video I've already covered in other videos in more depth, so I will still do those. But I hope you've sort of learned something and maybe just feel a bit more confident to get your machine, your C20, 30, 40, really working very, very well. Yeah, and I have to say, probably out of all the Sony Betas, this is probably one machine that's actually pretty a good one to start off with, as a first machine to sort of try and get up and running well, because they tend to be pretty solid. Okay, they do use that STK power regulator chip, which traditionally and notoriously are very unreliable. But I've had one fail out of all the ones I've looked at. I've probably looked at 30 or 40 of them now, probably more than that, and take into consideration the F30s as well. And it is just one I've had that's been bad. So don't be put off by that. They are a nice deck. They're not perfect by any means. There are things I don't always very much like about them. And that's why sometimes I would say the C9 is a better machine. But yeah, this, for a beginner's machine to sort of get into beta, get up and running, get one cheap, because they're starting to go for silly money, go for one of these. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching. Love to hear your comments on this one, whether you'd like me to do more of this sort of type of video where I put sort of all sorts of just little tips together on how to refurbish them. And if there's anything you think I've missed as well, please put that in the comments, because I will do follow-up ones, and I will do videos of similar decks like the F30, for example, where possibly I can cross over some of those comments. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video. Oh, don't forget to subscribe either. Thank you. Bye.